All right, we are starting this blood sugar report. Let's do it. Okay, so just in case anyone misses it, we are recording, so I'm super excited to be able to share this with everyone. But welcome to the blood sugar audit workshop. Basically, what we're going to do over the next 30 to 45 minutes is we're going to look through this report together. Thankfully, I had someone who was willing to send it. Of course, I sent it for personal information, but we're going to take a look through this report together because I see a lot of good things and I see some things that we might kind of get curious about. So I want you to have this action step in mind throughout. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain everything through the lens of myself, a diabetes coach and a dietitian. So I'm a healthcare provider. So I'm going to explain everything from my perspective. And then what I want you to do, if you can, is I want you to try your best to think in that way about your Dexcom report and say, okay, this is something I could use. This might be something I need to look at. And hopefully this will help you to be able to fine tune your blood sugar all on your own. But of course, if you need help, you're always welcome to reach out. Let me know if you want to find me anywhere. It's type 1, type fun. And you're welcome to just email me to, so let me know if you want my email. Send me a message somehow, some way. We'll figure it out. So let's jump in. So first things first, before we even get into this blood sugar report, what you have to know is that the number of days makes a big difference, in my opinion. So if we have a 90-day report, then this graph that you see might look a little bit more boring, for lack of better words. But if you have a 7-day report, it gets a little bit wonkier. And that's just because we don't have as much data averaging things out. And that's okay. So 14 days. And the other thing I want to make sure of is, are we actually looking at 14 days? So I go all the way to the right side here and I see the days with data, 13 out of 14. It's almost a 14 out of 14, 97% time active means that we have 97% of the CGM data in the last 14 days is available in this report. So we can treat it like a 2-week report. If we had a 7 out of 14, then we'd treat it more like a 1-week report. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we already know what we're looking at. Now let's look at some of these numbers. So we have an average of 127, a standard deviation of 39. That's pretty decent. So average glucose is basically all of the numbers averaged out together. So the average of this report is a 127 blood sugar. Not too bad. The standard deviation is basically, I kind of think about it like plus or minus. So where are we going? So if we have an average here, plus or minus is kind of what we're looking at. It's not just that. For example, there can be a 200 blood sugar report, or excuse me, a 200 blood sugar in this report, even though the average plus the standard deviation would still be under 200. I know that gets a little confusing, but we'll figure out what that means together. In truth, by the way, the next number, the coefficient of variation, I usually skip it. I think that the standard deviation numbers makes more sense than a percentage. So usually I skip it personally. If you want to use it, you can, but just for me, I skip it. So the GMI is an estimate of A1C. You will not get this if you only have a 7-day report. Usually it starts to generate when you get a 2-week report or greater. I think it's a good gauge, but I don't think it's the ultimate thing to focus on. So when you're looking at your own report, give yourself kindness. It can show trends and it can show what's going on, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. An example I'll give is I actually had a client text me this morning saying that her son's A1C was 5.8%, but the GMI is 6.6. That's a little far off. So we know that she was having some CGM issues. So I think that's probably what contributed. But if our CGM is pretty accurate, then I would assume plus or minus 0.5 of an error. So this GMI 6.3, maybe this person has a 5.8, maybe this person has a 6.8 or anything in between. But if I got any of those numbers back, that would make sense based on this report. Now, again, this is only 2 weeks. So if the 2 weeks prior looked completely different, then this GMI is not going to make as much sense. A 90-day report, even if you just pull the overview, a 90-day is the most accurate way of looking at that GMI, assuming the CGM is working. So, okay, so there's some average numbers, and then we have time in range. We have 69% time in range. 70% and above is the clinical recommendation. So there's a few things we might be able to work on. We don't have any very highs in this report, which is cool. Very high is 250 and above. We do have some highs, and we do have some lows, and we do have some very lows. So we'll work through and think through those together. And then the average calibrations, that's just how many times are you manually checking and then putting that into the CGM. You can tell that this person does that pretty minimally, which I would say could be a good sign that they trust the CGM. One way to look at it. And then, okay, so let's look at this graph. So we've done a ton, and now we're finally looking at this graph. So in this graph, I look at three things. I want you to note three things. Number one, I look at the black dotted line. What's it doing? So we see we have a good bit of an average consistency. Maybe we kind of fine tune things by the morning, which means our pump is working for us in our favor. I do know this person is on an insulin pump, specifically a t:slim, like myself. So I speak this language pretty well. And then throughout the day, we have some average consistency and even into the evening. So sometimes I see more variation, but overall, we're pretty steady throughout the day, which is cool. So that's thing number one, the black dotted line. Thing number two, I look at colors. What am I seeing? I see a little bit of red in the afternoon or evening. I see some highs throughout the night. Now notice, this is another kind of advanced thing. This person has different ranges for the day versus the night. So if their target range was 70 to 180 all day long, their time in range would probably go up into the 80s, I would bet, at least, maybe the high 80s. We might be able to see that on the AGP report at the end. So we'll keep that in mind. But that is, I think, a good note that all of this data is relative. So the time in range, if you can see that colored bar there in the middle, and then the target range underneath that, that shows us that, okay, the nighttime target range is 70 to 120. So if they're out of that range, if they're 121 all night, they're out of range. They're technically high. So all of a sudden we can see that the data is relative. So, okay, so we've looked at the black dotted line, we've looked at colors, and then I look at the height of the gray bars. So if you can see kind of at like 6, 7, 8 a.m., those gray bars are pretty much non-existent. That means that this person is super consistent at that time, and I bet that's due to that insulin pump. Whereas let's say at 5 or 6 p.m., if you can tell that the gray bar is kind of almost the whole range. So sometimes they might be closer to low or perfectly in range. Maybe they're seeing those unicorn 100s. And then they might also be a little bit high at that time. So we know that we have more variation or deviation at that time. Okay, this is the first page and we've already gathered a ton of data. So I hope that this is a helpful first start. Let's keep going. Okay, so the overview page, now this person is on a G7, and if you will notice, they were on a G6 previously. So basically what I know is you would see, read these from left to right, by the way. This, I don't know why it gives me a double screen, but we're working with it. So on the left, we'll see the Dexcom G7. This kind of just tells me what they have going on. So for example, I see that now they have low snooze on and they didn't previously, or excuse me, let me take that back. They didn't have the low repeats previously, and now they have low snooze. So it's kind of similar but different because it's snooze versus repeat, if that makes sense. Repeat was off, snooze is on. Is that confusing? It might be confusing, but anyways, so I can see if they have what kind of alarms they've got going on. This helps me to just kind of understand, okay, what is someone being told? So for example, this person, when they switched to the G7, they started getting low alerts at 85. That tells me that they can be proactive, especially, I mean, if they're just hanging out at 85, they might not need to do anything. But if their blood sugar is tanking, and they get an alert at 85, they may not go as low as if they started to take action if they were at 80 or 75 or 70. So those settings can kind of just tell me what someone might be experiencing. I can also see the high is set at 160. So if they're at or above 160, they're starting to get alerts and they're starting to pay attention. Sometimes this can cause alarm fatigue, but when someone has it set a little bit lower like this, I typically assume that they're a little bit more dialed in, which seems to be the case for this person. So that's how I know that, okay, we start to see what's going on. Okay, patterns. If you ever want a little bit of kindness, self-kindness, just take a look at the pattern overview. This is a really great way of giving yourself a pat on the back. This person had 85% time in range, remember, with that 80 to 120. in range time overnight. So I would assume they didn't be in the 90% for sure if they were just 70 to 180 all day. But average 106, that's amazing. Standard deviation 26, also amazing. We still have the 2% very lows and 4% lows. So that's something that I would look into. It seems like, if anything, we might be dealing with lows more so than highs. So that's something I would take a look into. But this is just a really great confidence boost. And then this sideways report, forgive me for not being able to flip it today, but this is every single day, 1 week at a time overlaid. So in a 14-day report, you'll get 2 of these, like you can see here. But you'll basically see 7 days at a time. And I used to skip these because I thought they looked overwhelming, but now I actually do use them to my advantage. So do you remember, by the way, on the first page, how I said those gray bars, the height of the gray bars? Remember how at like 6, 7, 8 a.m. that was almost non-existent? You can see that the data here is super stacked together, and that makes sense now, right? Whereas we talked about what, 5, 6 p.m., how we might be closer to high, might be closer to low, and we can definitely see that happening. So we have more variation in the afternoon and a really tight, consistent blood sugar going on early in the morning. Okay, let's keep going here. And that looks like it's true over here as well. So we know we have a little bit of a pattern, and now we get into the daily graph. So by the way, if anyone's logging their insulin or logging their blood sugar, anything like that, that will pop up in these time, device, event, detail, insulin unit, glucose, that chart, but it only goes so far. I think it only gives you about 15 events that occur. So if you have 20 things that happen in a day, we'll miss the first 5 on this report. That may not make sense up front. I'll see if there's another day that we can look at that for, but I use the keys. I always use the keys because I don't trust myself to remember everything, but using the key, we can start to understand what's going on in the blood sugar, at least just a little bit more. Let's go to a day where we have some full data. Okay, so we have some full data here. So what I'm seeing is, okay, we're a little bit higher up, or in the evening, it looks like. Maybe we have certain types of meals going on. That's a whole nother discussion, but I think on this Friday, April 4th, this does look like a little bit of the glucoaster, the blood sugar roller coaster, glucoaster as I call it. So we go low, high, low, high, low, high, low, and that tells me that, okay, I think we're overdoing it on both ends. We're correcting too much when we're high, and we're having too many carbs when we're low. So this is kind of where we start to have those conversations. You can also see there's all those events happening. I think that looks like it's 15. And it seems like that's the first of the day. So, okay, so we didn't get cut off yet, but this starts to tell me, okay, I know that this person is actively watching their blood sugar and actively correcting their blood sugar. So, and I also see some rising fast, falling fast, which means, okay, there's a little bit of that overcorrection happening. So that's something we can pay attention to. This day, April 3rd, we do have a little bit of that roller coaster in the evening, but things look a little bit more stable. So basically what we can do here's this, by the way, on April 1st, some events not shown due to page constraints. Basically, it can't show me anything before 8 a.m., which I think I'm only missing 1 or 2 events anyways, but that's how you can kind of tell if you're getting everything or not. But this is what I will do. So I will go through these reports with people, and I will say, okay, what are we looking at? What are we going through? I will say too, by the way, my favorite way to use this report is I take a blood sugar report and I take a food log and I just combine them. So I will say, hey, what's our blood sugar? What were we eating? If we have the insulin, that's even better. So I'll ask for a pump report or manual injection log, something like that. And then I say, what's actually happening? Because whatever's happening, we can figure out what we might need to do a little different to fine tune and actually see what we want the next time. So I love looking through these reports, not to nag, not to pick someone apart, but to say, hey, here's some details we're noticing. What can we do about it? So that's one of the ways that I go through these daily reports, especially if I have a food log. Oh, it makes all of a difference. So if you want to figure this out yourself, download this report, have food logs from the last few days, and just start to compare. Like if, for example, if at 4 p.m. on March 31st, this person had a low snack. Let's say they had 20 carbs. I would say, oh, that's why we spiked. And then if we corrected or if we got auto-corrected, I would be able to say, okay, well, if we overdid it, maybe that's on us. But if our pump suggested that much correction, then we might actually need to change our settings. So boom, all of a sudden, sure, we had low, high, low going on, But now we can actually gather a little bit more data and be intentional with what we want to do about it. All right, I'm going to take a quick water break. How's everyone doing? Is this making sense? I hope it is. I love doing this kind of stuff. Okay, gotta get the water in. Now this next page, this compare page, is my favorite day, and I hope you can see this nicely. Let me see if I can, I don't know if that moves me or not, but here's the compare page. Actually, I'm so sorry. Let's look at the Saturday, March 29th. Do you see how there's two lines going on at midnight? I would assume that this means one of two things. Either, number one, someone has both CGMs on at the same time, the Dexcom G7. So they have two CGMs on during the grace period. So sometimes you get double data. Or perhaps that was a travel day. If you travel, like let's say this is your blood sugar. If you travel from east to west and you have to jump forward in time, then your blood sugar might look like this on a report. And if you travel from west to east, you might see this on your report. I don't think that that's what's happening based on the data here. It looks like there's maybe a CGM error going on, but that's what I would say. So now let's see. Okay. Welcome, welcome. We're on to the compare report if you can hear us. So let's go through this compare report. Let me know if you need any. Oh, yep. Okay, we're connected to the audio. Good. Welcome. I'm glad you joined us. You actually just missed someone else. We have gone through the first half of this blood sugar report, and now we were on my favorite page. So I'm so glad that you just joined. So we're on the compare report. Feel free if you want to come off or come on to camera or unmute or ask me questions, you're more than welcome to. But let's look at this compare report together. So when we're looking at this, I look at several things. You missed the first page, the overview page, just a few things to look for. I'll just fill you in on those, but we can see we have similar data. So we have the average, we have the standard deviation, we have the GMI, we have the coefficient of variation. And so remember, average, all blood sugar together, standard deviation, how are we wiggling? Average plus or minus, whatever that number is. We can still have blood sugars that are over or under that number, but that's how we can kind of tell what's going on. GMI is our estimate of A1C. We will not get that unless we have at least 14 days of data-ish, or it doesn't usually generate on a 7-day or less. So note to self. And then coefficient of variation, I usually skip. You can tell it's a little better here, but I don't usually use that. Time in range, we can see that we actually decreased time in range, but we had less very highs. Our low patterns are the same, and we do have about 14 days of data in each, so we can use these to compare. Now let's look at the charts themselves. If you notice, we have a little bit more of a low pattern going on at night in the previous 14 days, and in the current 14 days, according to this report at least, then we had more highs going on at night. So that's something that I would ask someone. I would say, hey, what's going on at this time? Or maybe were meals different, or were sites different, or what was happening? Sometimes I see this type of pattern for different meal plans. Sometimes I see this for someone traveling. So lots of things to consider, but that is, I think, all of this data. Again, my favorite report, especially if you want to compare. Sometimes I'll just pull this report for a 90-day, and then I see what happened the last 90 days versus this 90 days, and then I can see more so if my A1C might change. That GMI is our A1C estimate. I will look at it. I don't thoroughly believe it until I see a 90-day, but I still anticipate some differences. Okay, this is the compare stuff. It's the settings. I usually skip both of these pages unless I really need it, but I don't think I do. And then, okay, hourly and daily statistics. Hang with me because this looks like a lot, but it is honestly one of my favorite pages of data. So, or two of my favorite pages of data. So for the daily stats, I will actually pull a 30 or a 90-day report and look at these daily stats. So if I assumed this was a 30 or 90, we know we're only dealing with 2 weeks. So it's going to be 2 Mondays, 2 Tuesdays, 2 Wednesdays, 2 Thursdays, 2 Fridays. But if I have a 30 or a 90-day, then I can see, oh my gosh. Okay. So let's say on Saturdays, we seem to have more time out of range and we have more highs. Okay. Maybe we're having a fun Saturday, something's going on, or we're paying less attention. We're out of routine, whatever it may be. There's potentially some contributing factors. And then if it's during the week, I see, okay, we have a little bit more of that time in range. That's cool. So that's the daily stats. I'm going to actually use the hourly stats to talk through some of the numbers themselves, but daily, I like to pull for more data. Hourly, even a 7-day report works really well. Okay, so also I'm going to go back up a page just to show. Okay, on this graph, you can see that the time in range is different. So from at night, it's 80 to 120, and during the day, it's 70 to 180, or excuse me, 70 to 120, and then 70 to 180. Okay, so now let's go back. Oh, okay, there we go. So now you can see that there's a lot of high time at night, but we know that a 121 blood sugar is considered high. So it's not actually that high. If the settings were the same all day, I anticipate the time and range would go up significantly and these would look a little different. That's kind of why we also have a dramatic jump from 10 and 11 p.m. to 11 p.m. and midnight. So these are some of the things that I kind of look at. Again, all the data is relative. We give ourselves kindness with what we can. But this can give us a good indicator of what might be happening. I'm trying to see if I can find a pattern that, let's see. Yeah, here's a good one. Okay, so hopefully you can see this one, but can you tell how at 5 and 6 p.m.-ish, we have a few lows going on? So you have 4%, 5%, 9%, and 3% very low. So evenings seem like a low struggle. Maybe that's dinner, maybe it's snackage, maybe it's an active evening, I'm not sure. And then we see that we have really highs. So 7, 8, 8, 9, we have 4%, 3%. Sometimes when I see that, I kind of anticipate the roller coaster. So basically, if it makes sense, this is like the numbers version of the graphs, the visuals, the daily charts, everything that we've looked at visually. This is the numbers, the data, which I think this looks kind of overwhelming unless you're painting a picture. And that's what I literally do, if that makes sense. So I will literally paint a picture. I'm like, okay, we're low here, high here, we're doing rebounds, all that different kind of stuff. So that's what I will look at. So all the numbers that we're talking about in this first section, that's the time and range broken down into the numbers specifically. And then I will use the number of readings and the minimum and maximum. The number of readings, I pretty much just verify that everything's pretty consistent. If, for example, we have about 140, 50, 60s, I think 70s here and there for the number of readings, if I saw that we had 40 readings in 1 hour, I would just kind of not include that in my overall analysis because I know it's bias, so it's not as accurate or consistent with everything else. So again, the data is relative, but that's the number of readings and the minimum and the maximums. I will look at those too just to see, okay, where are we having problem areas? We see a 39 minimum at 8 and 9 p.m. So it seems like those are the lowest times. Sometimes we also have the highest numbers around that time too. So it seems like evenings are more of a control issue or something that we'd want to focus in on. And again, we focus in with kindness. We're learning, we're growing. We never expect perfection. We're just seeing what we can do. And then in truth, from there, I like looking at the mean and the standard deviation. Like for example, at 6 and 7 a.m., standard deviation is 16. That is wonderfully boring. That is one of my best compliments. It's wonderfully boring. So that is what we see for the standard deviation then. Whereas at other times of day, we can see standard deviation into the 50s in the evening. Again, those are the low and high issues. So we can see, we're dealing with lows and highs. We have a higher standard deviation. That makes sense. Whereas at 6, 7, 8 a.m., oh my gosh, we're 97, 98, 99% in range, and we have such a low standard deviation. So cool. Other than that, the quartiles, the median, the IQR, this percent CV, all of that, the numbers in those last, 7 columns, rows, sorry, words are hard, happy Saturday. I don't focus on those as much. I think they're very helpful. I just think that I can pull what I need from that first half anyways. So I basically pick and choose what data to look at, not to be biased, but just to not feel so overwhelmed by all the data. So this is the hourly and daily stats. I love those. And we have made it to the last report. So real quick, look, 83% time and range. We see that? Okay, hang on, hang with me. here we go. Over here, we are 69% in range, 69% and 83%. We are looking at the exact same data, but in this one, our range is 70 to 180 all day instead of being cut to 70 to 120 at night. So now we can see, okay, we are actually in the 80%. So 69% time in range. Remember, 70% is the clinical standard. 69% might be concerning until you know that, okay, yeah, we actually just have a lot of a variation in the what we're being shown. So we can see here 83% in range. Pretty great. We still deal with a little bit of those lows. We're not worried about very highs, which is cool. So overall, this is a good thing. We still have some of those nighttime highs, wonderful control in the early morning. That's thanks to that pump. And then throughout the day, we do have some highs and lows, but I like this report. I think it's super pretty, but once we get here, if we've read everything else, I pretty much know what's going on and I don't have any questions. I do just like to check that time in range if someone has different ranges set, because usually this one is 70 to 180 for everyone. So that's it. That's the whole pump report. We made it. Or excuse me, Dexcom report. Oh my gosh, a pump report would be fun though. I think I'll stop my screen share here unless, Delcy, do you have any questions or is there anything that, I know we missed some of that initial stuff together. Is there anything that you want to ask about that maybe you didn't, weren't here for that we missed? If you're able to unmute, I get it. If you're not, sometimes it's hard to fully keep up with all the tech things. And I'm going to plug in my computer. Speaking of tech things. Okay, here we go. We are getting plugged in. I don't want my computer to die on us all. Okay, we're good. Well, I think I will stop my screen share here, like I said. And if you need anything, if you missed anything, if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out and let me know. I don't know if you have chat capability or voice capability, up to you though. I'm so glad you were able to join. And I'm sorry that we were in on the end there, but this was super fun. I had a lot of fun at least. And I have this recording, so you should have access to this eventually soon. But okay. I'm going to stick around for a sec if you have any questions. Anything? I'm going to hydrate a little bit. Happy Saturday. Hydration is important. If you're able to use the chat at all, I'd love to know where you're located or where you're coming from. Oh, hi, thanks. Yay. Okay, I agree with your conclusions about painting the patterns and predicting the outgoing every time. Yep. The next one goes super high. How to reduce that impact. Yes. Okay. I love it. This is such a good question. So I'm just going to verbalize it just to make sure, because I don't know if my recording can actually capture the chat, but basically what Delcy is asking is saying every time she has a low, then she goes high. So how are we going to minimize that impact? That is such a good question. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, okay, sorry, gotta hydrate. 30 minutes of talking will do that to you. But to minimize that impact, there's a lot of things that are going on. So there was actually a day in that report, and I'll just show you with my hands. What it looked like was this. And I call this the glucose roller coaster, the glucoaster. So blood sugar roller coaster, up, down, up, down. It's that reactive pattern, right? Or it can be a reactive pattern, I guess I should say. So if we're low here, that might be because of this high. But this low isn't actually because it's this high. It's because of this low that caused the high that caused the low. And this one is actually because of this. So this is because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. Oh, okay, right? That can seem overwhelming. But when we realize, okay, there's a pattern here. What's going on? Then we can make something different happen. So to minimize the impact of that spike, I would say, why are we going low? What's happening in that low? So if you're going low because we overcorrected a high, okay, we needed less correction at the high to avoid the low, to avoid the next high. So the high correction is actually, avoiding the high is actually avoiding the overcorrection here. Or maybe it was a meal. Maybe you had a meal and then you went low and then you went high. Again, this was an overcorrection, but why we went low was because of a meal. So if we got too much insulin, then I would say, okay, maybe we need to double check our settings or double check our systems. Maybe it was the pre-bolus, maybe it was the carb count, maybe it was the total insulin. If you're on manual injections, you might have to round insulin. There's a lot of things to consider. So maybe that's why. So again, it's not actually because we were low, but it's because this happened, which was that meal. Maybe it's exercise. So if your exercise causes you to go low, which then causes you to have a snack, which then causes you to go high. And I would say, okay, the high isn't actually because of the low, it's because of the exercise. So what do we need to do in those situations? Now, let me clarify. I do recognize that the low is a part of it. So if you're going high because of a low, you might need less carbs. Simply put, you might need less carbs. Now, my recommendation typically, now I don't know your situation per se, so double check everything with your doctor. Of course, I always love making sure we have a dynamic, inclusive care team. But in that low, if you're going high, there's something here is too much, whatever it is. So maybe let's say it's carbs. We're having too many carbs. We need to have less carbs. But that might seem scary, right? Because if you're going low, you're like, oh, I don't want to be low. So you might have carbs to help account for that, but then it causes a high. This is where I teach all of my clients. I say, hey, like we have to have a strategy for what's happening in those moments because it changes. So I don't know if you were taught the eat 15 carbs, wait 15 minutes thing, but I was taught that. And let me tell you, now being on an insulin pump, an automated system, it does not work for me. It always causes me to go high unless I have too much insulin. That's the only situation where it doesn't. So if I'm low, I don't actually need 15 carbs personally. I need 5 or 10 maybe. Now I have actually on my desk here, I have these yogurt bites. I think these are 15 carbs. Yep, they're 15 carbs. This would have been my perfect blood sugar fix previously. But now I only eat a few of these. So let me see. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, the pump. Yeah. Actually, if you're refusing the pump, let me just validate that. I've been there. I tried to pump when I was a freshman in high school, so throwback, but I tried to pump. But I was also in pageants. I was in competitive dance, and the costume changes were too much. So one day I ripped the pump off during the pageant. I was like, I'm never doing a pump again. It was very dramatic, but that's what teenagers are for, right? So then at teenage years, not every teenager is dramatic, I guess, but I think I was. So anyways, so fast forward to senior year of high school, I finally tried it again. It's the same pump. I tried it again. I still use it to this day, actually. So we're going on quite some time. But I tried the pump again, and I remembered that scary feeling. I was like, oh, I refuse. I don't want to do this. But I tried it again just because I was actually in a competition. So I was using it for data. And it changed my life. And I never went back. And that is just because I had the right tools, the right systems, and the right settings the next time. So it can be very scary. Automated pumps are very scary, but actually what I've learned is I can turn my brain off a little bit more because I have my settings down pat. Now, if I don't have my settings down pat, I have to make sure I'm correcting those. I do that with a lot of folks all the time. I just say, okay, hey, this is happening. We need to look at this. We need to do that. You missed me saying this earlier, but my favorite thing to be able to do, not just only a CGM Dexcom report, but I like taking a Dexcom report and a food log and a pump report or a manual injection log if I have one. And I put them all together and I start to understand the bigger picture, because one piece of data may not actually be the answer. It can be a part of it though. And so I take a look at the bigger picture as much as I can. So again, to validate, it's okay. Pumps are scary. I think pumps are scary. I think they're terrifying. I was scared too of the injector thing that I had to do. I was like, oh, I don't want someone to shoot a little catheter into me. That's scary. So I started with the needles so I could just gently push it in myself. But then I moved to it and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty great. So, right, all of my preconceived notions have broken down slowly over time. That's just me. It doesn't have to be what happens to you. Manual injections, I think, are a wonderful system for so many people for so many reasons. But if you are struggling with the fact that you have to round your units, I'm assuming, so you have to do a whole unit here, this, that can cause a little bit of that variation. You can correct that with carbs or physical activity, stuff like that, just a little bit. You can help to make it make sense a little more. But if you're tired of having to round and having to estimate, and that is why your blood sugar is doing maybe this, if it is, then that's where I would say, hey, it could be worth trying out a pump. Who knows? And again, I know it's scary. Also, I haven't even touched the conversation of finances, insurance, that kind of stuff. I recognize that's a whole nother game to play. But if you like your system, great. You need some fine tunes. If you don't like your system and it's not working for you, maybe find a different one. I don't know, just some things to think about. But hopefully, you have a good care team who's mindful and considerate and able to answer questions. Do you have any other questions? You're asking wonderful questions and providing wonderful info so far. I'm so glad that you joined. Yes, absolutely. You are welcome. Are you worried about this weekend at all? A lot of people are celebrating the holiday weekend. Do you have anything coming up that you're worried about or wanting to kind of plan for, think through? Food situations could be one. Trying to think of what else, Easter candies or anything like that. If you celebrate, if not, that's a-okay too. But I've had a lot of conversations with my clients this week about prepping for success. Let's see. Normally, you cook yourself to avoid those situations. Okay. Yeah, I get that. I used to do that too. Does it ever make you feel like left out or socially isolated, or do you like it? Does it feel good? Are you not worried about it? Like anything is okay. I'm just, if there's any way I can help, I would love to. And I know typing takes a sec, so no rush. Um, Hopefully, whatever you decide to cook, if you are cooking for yourself this weekend, hopefully it's lovely. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I'm glad you were here. Thank you so much for all the questions. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you hopefully again soon. So find me on, Instagram or Facebook, wherever you're located. Okay. All right. That's it. We answered some questions. We did a Dexcom read through. That was super exciting. At least I had fun. I don't, hopefully anyone who joined was able to see everything, but thank you for watching this. If you made it all the way here, and I just want to leave you with an idea, a thought. So kind of like we were just chatting about, there's different situations that come up and happen. And sometimes it's kind of tough to figure them all out, but we make it work as best we can. But again, if you feel like you don't have the info, you don't have the answers, you don't have that connective part, like you maybe have this, and don't know how to do this, this is my favorite thing to do. And I would love to be helpful for you. So if you want someone on your care team, if you want someone who's supportive, please reach out. Please send me a DM or a message wherever you're finding me, however you're seeing this. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to know if there's a way I can support you. And if there is, I would love to. So please let me know. For now, that's it. That's all I got. So I'm going to set you free, but I hope to chat again very soon. So take care, guys. And seriously, if you need any help, I have a